Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Enterprise Bank and Trust was founded by entrepreneurs with the core focus of serving privately owned small and medium-sized businesses who have a story to tell. Enterprise Bank's commitment is to listen, learn, and guide clients to a lifetime of financial success. Enterprise Bank, together, there's no stopping you. I am Joel Goldberg, coming to you from the Kansas City Audiovisual Studios. They create engaging spaces. Check them out at kcav.com. I've said this many times on the Rounding the Bases podcast. I don't have a lot of sports guests. Every now and then I do. Sometimes it's someone from the baseball world. We've had some football players in there. We've had basketball, had Danny Manning, the legendary Kansas Jayhawk. I don't think I've done a whole lot in the world of golf. And so I want to do that today because, one, cool entrepreneurial story. Two, I think a lot of the people that may listen or watch this play the sport of golf certainly use it as a networking tool. In the case of me, it's more networking tool than anything else, and I don't use it enough because I'm just not very good. And I'm also excited to bring in my guest today, and then the timing is great as we're here and the weather is getting better. Spring is on the way. But I will say that not only is this my first golf guest, I believe it is my first guest that comes from down under in Australia, in St. Louis now, but by way of Australia and Atlanta in there, and many stops along the way in the world of golf. And so I'm happy right now to bring in Brad Smith, who has a very cool company called FLYT Golf. Brad, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joel. How are you, mate? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing good. See, it's the first person that's ever called me mate on this show. Although, we have some Aussies in baseball. Always have, always will. We had a guy. I'll get off topic. Although he would actually be a good guest. I need to track him down at some point. We had a guy for 2 or 3 years here in Kansas City named Peter Moylan.
Yeah,
and actually great past story of all types of interesting entrepreneurial endeavors and jobs as he was trying to get back into baseball. And he taught me how to speak Aussie. So he taught me the accent. And so I was able to figure that one out a little bit. So I was proud of that. But, we don't get a chance to have too many Aussies here on this show. So I want to start with this. We'll talk about your golf background. We'll talk about FLYT Golf in a moment. But how long has golf been a part of your life? Did you grow up playing it from a young age in Australia?
Yeah, so I've been playing since I was about 11 years old, almost 12. My dad was a good golfer growing up, so definitely was around the game. When he had kids, though, at a pretty young age with my mum, he put the clubs down, and it wasn't until my older brother actually was maybe 14 or 15 decided that him and his friends wanted to go and play a little bit of golf, and they'd go out on a Friday night after school and play 9 holes, and I'd stand there at the driving range with my sand wedge and my 8-iron and smack as many balls as I could in 2 hours until they finished, and I got hooked pretty quick. So definitely been playing for a while now.
Did you have visions of going pro, or when did playing on multiple tours become a reality for you?
It really was pretty immediate. I mean, I would say within 6 months of really getting out there on a weekly basis, I was dead set on the idea that eventually one day I'd play professional golf, and I certainly hoped that my playing career was going to be a little longer than the 10 years that it lasted. But, family and business and things like that got in the way along the way. But I definitely knew pretty early on that professional golf was something, and golf in general was something that I wanted to be part of my everyday life.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that and some of your accomplishments in the world of golf in a bit. Before I get to your business, how did you end up in the States?
Yeah, so, I'd say somewhat by chance. I'd always wanted to go to college in the United States. Just didn't really have the initial opportunity right out of high school to go to college. Our school years are slightly different to the US. We finish in December before our summer, and then obviously your school years sort of in August, and it just didn't pan out right away. I played full-time golf and worked part-time for a couple of years actually out of high school. And that was really when my game certainly developed to the level that I felt confident and had the opportunities to come over to college. So I came over in 2004 after graduating high school in 2001. So I've been here for the better part of 16, 17 years now, with a couple of years in between when I was playing overseas. I lived back in Australia for a couple of years in 2010, 2011, but primarily here in the US.
And I've always said, and I've always seen this, that one, this is a guaranteed statement that any pro athlete at some point will be a former pro athlete. And, the beauty of golf is that it's one of the rare sports where you actually can play well beyond whatever your prime years would be, right? I mean, you don't have 50, 60, 70-year-old football players, basketball
playing on the
players,
Champions Tour.
You couldn't do it, right? But you could do it in golf, and so that's one of the cool things. But there must have come a moment where you said, "Okay, I've got to turn the page now," and that'll get me to talking about the business. And I think a product that a lot of golfers would be, and I'll let you sell that. I don't need to do that for you, but I just like the journey and the interest in it. But what was that moment for you where you said, "All right, I think it's time to do something else, even if it is in that world"?
Yeah, it actually happened to me a couple of times, to be honest. And fortunately, unfortunately, however you look at it, I certainly don't live my life with any regrets. But it was really injuries that sort of brought the idea up in my own mind that, like, gee whiz, maybe I need to put the clubs down and focus on something else. But that was actually in 2013. I had some really big issues with my back, and that was the year I was actually playing PGA Tour Latin America. I was injured at the start of the season, and they had no major medical category back then for that tour at all. And I was kind of, it was either try and play through it and just see if I happened to play okay, or just don't play and lose status. So I figured I'd give it a shot, but my back deteriorated. I did get some treatment and injections and stuff in my back and things like that throughout the year. But by the end of that year, threw it in, took a couple of years off, and that was really when I got into the instruction side of things. Down in Atlanta at Eagles Landing Country Club, where I was the director there for a year of instruction. But then my game improved and my back through rehab improved in the about a year and a half that I was there in total. And so I went back out and played again. So spent a couple more years chasing the PGA Tour and the Korn Ferry Tour, web.com as it was then, and Mondayed into a couple of the web.com events and played a couple of those. And my game was close, but, FLYT came along in 2017 in the initial stages of development, and that was the last year that I had little kids, and my son was born, daughter was on the way, and golf wasn't quite where it needed to be. And I'm like, all right, you know what, I've got something else I need to focus on here, not just myself, my family, but also FLYT itself as well. So took a step away at the end of 2017.
All right, so let's talk about FLYT, and I think the beauty of it, and look, I know this in baseball. I know this in all sports. Not every competitor or every athlete loves the sport at the same level, but for the most part, everybody kind of lives it, and they do it again. I have certainly met athletes that actually didn't love it, but they were just really blessed with talent. But for the most part, I think everybody recognizes that, hey, I don't have a normal office job here. I get a chance to go and whatever the sport is, and in the case of golf, to travel the world and to be outside every day and playing and all that. So that's an amazing thing. You still have elements of that, of course, but now it's the business side of it. So first and foremost, how did you come up with FLYT? What went into that, and what kind of motivated you to start that?
Yeah, so I was still playing in 2017. I was actually I'd done a Monday qualifier for a PGA Tour event down in Dallas, in Texas. And it really, our core product is the FLYT Chipping Sleeve, or FLYT Sleeve. And the initial concept and idea for the sleeve stemmed from Jason Day, who was world number one, I think, at the time, or pretty close to it, and was, winning a PGA and doing all that sort of stuff. So he was sort of right at the forefront of the game. And he's notably the best chipper and pitcher of the golf ball in golf. And, is always a talking point, no matter what level he's playing at the time. Everyone's talking about his short game. So Jason's chipping and pitching is just this very simple body rotation, his hands, his arms, everything stays really quiet, and he just uses his torso to control his chipping and pitching. And I always had a great short game, but it was the straightforward shots, or the shots that you truly hit 80 to 85% of the time. It just wasn't as consistent and wasn't sort of performing at the level I felt like I should. You could put me behind a bunker to a short flag, and I felt like I was, pretty good at that. But an easy shot to a par 5 from 40 yards where I should be making birdie at the level I was at, just wasn't doing it as often as I should. So Was just chatting with a buddy of mine that was friends with Jason, and they were discussing what Jason and his coach do, in order for him to replicate this chipping and pitching action. And the solution that they had, I didn't think was a good one. So fast forward, R&D in 2 years to when we actually launched in 2019. And if you head over to our website, www.flytgolf.com, you can check out the products there, and it's the chipping sleeve. You'll see we have a pattern on the insert that basically helps keep your trail arm. So for a right-handed golfer, the right arm keeps the wrist from breaking down, keeps your elbow from breaking and folding, forces you to use your torso the way Jason does. And we were fortunate in our first year to have a tour rep out on the PGA Tour, and Jason did provide us feedback, although he's not someone that needs to use the product because he already does it so well. He gave us great feedback, but we do have a number of PGA Tour players now and PGA Tour instructors, just over 50 in total, that are using it after year one. So it is exciting, and it can help a lot of golfers out there if it can help some of those guys.
Well, I was going to say, too, I mean, it's one thing to start this company and to offer the next solution. And we all know, especially all of us struggling golfers, or the great ones for that matter, too, that you're constantly trying to iron something out or get better or fix something, and nothing's ever fully fixed either. So when you get those type of endorsements from guys at the highest levels, what does that mean? Not just for business, but I think for just validation for yourself, because those are your peers.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where the credibility lies. You start, it's certainly not the be all and end all. And to be honest, I'd say that the instructors at the highest level are more important sometimes than the players, because even these players at the very top of the game, they have a coach or an instructor. And so if that instructor, believes in something and likes what you're doing, and they then go to that top player and say, look, you're struggling with this, put this on, let's use this periodically to get this, whatever the aspect of their game they're struggling with, let's get this on you and let's get that out of your game and let's move forward. So I think the instructors have been huge, and we've had a few pretty big names. Bradley Hughes is probably at the moment the biggest instructor in the game, and Hugo's a good friend of mine, and he's been a huge proponent of our sleeve and has done a great job helping us, and introducing us to some other instructors and other players and other customers that he teaches in Simpsonville, South Carolina. So it's definitely the credibility. I think that's the biggest thing, is when people ask, is having those names.
Well, I think something that would be interesting too for my listeners and viewers, and if we take this back to, the real world and whatever any business someone is in, it does not have to be sports at all. But I talk so often about trust and relationships, and I imagine you have to do that every single day. It's one thing to have potentially been a former competitor of a lot of these guys. You're in their circle, you're in their fraternity, versus somebody that obviously is not, right? If I wanted to go and sell these guys something, they're going to say, who are you? Doesn't mean they won't listen, but it's a little harder to get in, because this as well as anyone. These guys, not just the Phils of the world and the Rorys of the world, but all of them that are playing professionally on any level of a tour are being pulled in a lot of directions by people that want to hit it big in that one moment. So
absolutely.
What do you do? How do you approach that? Because you have a head start over many others, but you also can burn that bridge real quickly.
Really quickly. And so I think that's where, I have friends asking me, like, how have you gotten it in so-and-so's hand? How are you at these events? Well, the fact of the matter is we have to have a tour rep who's registered with the PGA Tour. I can't just reach out to the PGA Tour and say, hey, I need access to your practice facility. And especially with COVID last year, it was even stricter, So finding that tour rep, and we're very fortunate very early on that this tour rep actually reached out to us. He's obviously looking for products like this that he feels confident in and feels like he could rep to some of these players. And he also happens to be based in Kansas City. So I think once he and I got chatting, and there were synergies, and there were so many things that were similar outside of the synergies that we had, that it was a good fit. So he got out there. He has the reputation, 15, 20 years on the PGA Tour. He's known the guys that have been out there for 15, 20 years, has the reputation with them. And then the new guys, when they hear from the guys who have been out there for 15 years, you need to talk to Mark. Mark knows what he's talking about. And he's now actually moved on this year to Foresight Golf. He's working with them full time, but he's then put us in touch with our new rep, who's also been out there for 15 years. So I couldn't myself walk out there and have that instant ability to walk up to a Jason Day or, Webb Simpson's another guy that's using it. If we walked up to Webb might remember me from college, but he's not going to trust me with a product I'm putting in his hands. So having that rep is really important to help out there on tour with the tour players.
Well, it's a reminder too, and I think this is an important question because I so often say that sports are very much like life in the sense that it's not just whoever the superstar is, there's a team that goes into it. The difference is that we see those teams. You see the role player coming off of the bench in football or basketball or hockey or soccer or any of those sports, but it's only one guy. Outside of your Ryder Cup and your team competitions, it's only one guy, at least from what we see, and maybe a caddy.
Right.
But it's so much more, isn't it?
It really is. So I think that's what people don't realize is the work that goes in with a team. So even though golf is an individual sport, it's become such a team sport, you can air quote that because, like you said, you've got the player and the caddy in the moment out there. Away from that, though, there is such a team dynamic to what they're all doing. So you've got the player, you've got the caddy, you've got the instructor, the mental coach. Some of them have nutritionists now. I mean, it's crazy. They have a team of this 5 to 10 people that when they're not at the tournaments, and tons of these people, they have their agent, and these people are around those players because they are athletes. Yes, they're golfers, but they're still in their, they're in their game, they're in their sport, they're in the ropes, they're trying to manage all these different aspects of their life, and they can't do that without the help of a team around them. And I think maybe people don't realize how much of a team dynamic there is to golf, even though it's such an individual sport, similar to tennis, same sort of thing.
One more question pertaining to the golf world and the professional world, because you were a full-time member, Asian and Australian PGA tours. You competed in European events, Korn Ferry Tour. What is take us inside the head, and nobody can understand what's inside the head of a Tiger Woods, and of course, right now in Tiger's case, everybody's just hoping for his health. But look, you can watch the documentary, you can watch all the highlights. There aren't very many. The Tigers, the Nicklases, the Arnolds, that have been at that level. But everyone that's out there at an event at any one of those tours is competing at a level that most people don't understand. What is the pressure? What is the pressure like?
It depends. I mean, I think it depends on the situation of where you are in terms of where you stand in the field and on the leaderboard. I can tell you that the pressure on Friday before they make the cut, if you're going to miss the cut by 4 or 5 shots, you're not too worried about it. I think you're probably thinking of the nearest bar you can go to for a beer afterwards. But I think, if you put it in the context of being in contention, having half a chance to win the tournament on a Sunday, there were a couple of instances, particularly on the Asian Tour, where I was close to winning, and I can take myself back to what it felt like to be in contention. And I think it's funny. I think there's almost less pressure when you're in the moment and you're competing to win a tournament. It almost feels like there's less pressure, I think, because you're playing well. Typically, it's very hard to get to that position on the leaderboard without having played pretty well. Now, you talk about Tiger Woods, and as an example, I mean, he played at what he says was his, sort of B minus level, and was winning tournaments regularly in the early 2000s. So someone like him, I think, is a different level. But I know for myself, when I was right up there in contention, I was playing pretty well. So I was very confident in what I was doing. I wasn't uncomfortable playing in front of people. I never have been. It's when you're not playing well and you're actually trying to make a cut, or you've missed 3 or 4 in a row. I think that's the hardest mentally. That's the hardest part of golf, is trying to get out of a little bit of a form slump and try and get yourself back into contention for tournaments. I think you've seen it recently with Jordan Spieth. There's a guy who was just beating the world by so far 3 or 4 years ago, and then sort of fell off a map, and you see him get back into contention. And that for him was the hardest hurdle. He got back in contention once, and then he was in contention again and again and again. And all of a sudden, 4 weeks in a row, he's been right there. He hasn't won yet, but he's probably comfortable being there again. And it's just a matter of time before a guy like him wins again. And then it's off to the races, and he'll probably win 4 or 5 times very quickly.
Interesting stuff. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the baseball-themed questions brought to you by Kissick Construction. Trusted team, reliable partner. Check them out at kissickco.com. Professionally speaking, this could be as a golfer or now as a businessman. What's the biggest home run you've hit?
Leaving Australia. I honestly get asked often why I would leave. Why would you leave Australia? It seems like a pretty good place to live. But America, I always saw the United States as, it's the land of opportunity, right? So, and I just don't think people probably appreciate how true that is, especially when, if you haven't lived somewhere else and see what a great country the United States is, I always wanted to live here and be, in this country, because I felt like it could benefit my golf. Where did I want to play? PGA Tour. Well, you can't play on the PGA Tour from Australia. So to get to the PGA Tour, you wanted to be in the United States. And then if I look at business, the opportunity in this country is just enormous. I think if you put the work in and you trust what you're doing, whatever it is you're doing, and believe in yourself and follow your dreams, you can, the American dream. Everyone that lived outside the United States talked about the American dream, and it's alive if you ask me. I mean, it's you just have to believe in yourself and what you're doing and believe in the country. But one of the proudest moments of my life was getting my dual citizenship with the United States. Great country to be in.
Very cool. Great perspective too. How about a swing and a miss, and what did you learn from it?
So when I was traveling a lot, social media was becoming a pretty popular thing, and Instagram was a new thing. And my biggest regret is not taking it seriously. I didn't see the benefit of, social platforms. But now in an e-commerce world of business, I now realize how important having that developed social media base could possibly have been. I probably had the opportunities more so than anyone else to, take myself as an individual and build a social media presence around myself. And that would have certainly made launching a business in the world of golf, if you already have created that sort of name for yourself and recognition through social media. I think that really, to me, is where I am now was a big miss, was probably not getting on top of it, early on when I could have and should have.
And so you work on it now and hopefully catch up a little bit. The last of the baseball themed questions is small ball. The book is Small Ball, Big Results. It's about the little things that add up to the big things. And you could certainly find that on Amazon from my website if you want it signed at joelgoldbergmedia.com. Locally, made in KC, Bliss Books and Wine. Small ball. What are the little things that add up to the big things for you?
This goes with business and life in general. I think just treating people the way you want to be treated in return. I don't think enough can be said for trying to be kind to people, and it's a choice, right? And I just find it hard to understand sometimes when people make the choice to not be kind to other people, because you never know who you're speaking to, especially, the first time you meet someone, you only get one, everyone knows you get one chance to make a first impression. And I think if you don't take that seriously, it can backfire on you in a big way, because you never know who you're speaking to and who they might know that you don't know they know. So I think treating people the way you want to be treated in return is about as important as it gets. Just be kind. It's not that hard.
Nope. Love thy neighbor, and it is advice that applies to every walk of life. Just too many of us forget it too often. 4 final questions as we round the bases. The first one, I know that you told me that you have been or visited 26 countries. So putting aside the 2 countries that you're a citizen in, the United States and Australia, did you have a favorite of the other 24?
I have a soft spot for Koh Samui in Thailand. It's a beautiful island. It's like a lot of the scuba diving islands. I think of all the places I've visited, Koh Samui in Thailand is a place I'd visit it as often as I could if I could, because it's just in the middle of the Thai peninsula, and it's beautiful. There's a great golf course up in the mountains, which some of the greens look like they've had elephants buried under them. They were pretty slopey, but it was you had that in the mountains, and then you had just perfect beaches and happy people everywhere. It was a pretty nice spot.
Okay, second question. We'll keep doing some favorites here. Favorite course that you have played on around the world?
Pebble Beach for the views. The stretch of holes from 4 through number 11 tee, it's unbelievable. And I mean, the 17th and 18th are incredible. But then probably Oakmont as well, Oakmont Country Club. It is a beast of a golf course, and it's a good one.
Out of curiosity, we'll just attach this to that question. Any holes in one over the course of your life?
3. I've had 3. Okay. Yeah.
You remember all of them, total specifics, right?
I do. The first one, I was 12 over par after 8 holes, and I was about 13 years old or something at the time. It was pouring with rain, and it was a slam dunk, 5-iron. We heard it. We could hardly see it. We just heard this clunk, and we got up there, and there it was in the bottom of the cup. And then the other 2 were actually in college in a month. I had one in practice, just playing with my buddies with 3-iron, and then the other one was my only one in competition. My last one, one little bounce in front of the hole and trickled in. That was a good feeling to do on a tournament.
All right, third question. Favorite golfer, doesn't have to necessarily be favorite, but who's that one golfer when you met him where you were like, oh my gosh, I just met fill in the blank? I'll give you mine. Mine, back when I worked in St. Louis many, many years ago, and they had the senior, I don't remember what they called it at that point, but it was the senior tour coming through. I don't remember what course it was at now. I was going to say Bellerive, but it wasn't. But regardless, I got a chance to sit down one-on-one with Arnold Palmer, which was...
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, that was like... and I'm a terrible golfer. I follow the sport. But that was one where it was like, it really didn't matter. That's just an iconic name in any walk of life, right?
Yeah.
Who was that for you?
I've crossed paths with a number of the really good players and played against them and had general small chat. But honestly, the best conversation I ever had with anyone of note was actually Colin Montgomery. And there was probably plenty of people that don't know who Colin Montgomery is. But he's from Scotland, and he's arguably one of the best, if not the best players that ever played in the European Tour, and captained the Ryder Cup team for Europe and all that sort of stuff. Never won a major. Wasn't overly popular in the United States just because of his mannerisms, and he was a little bit grumpy at times. But when I met him, I was waiting literally in Malaysia. I was sitting at the front of the golf course waiting for a taxi, and it was the year that he'd just captained the Ryder Cup team to victory over the US 2 months prior to me sitting down and chatting with him. And I was waiting for my taxi. He walks up. I think it was the whole experience that made him the one that really stood out. Was, I said to him, Colin, congratulations at the Ryder Cup. And he was going in a different direction. There was no one else there. And he changed directions and came over to me. And I was like, oh, this is nice. He's coming over to say hey. And then it was the next thing that he did, which was, all our tour bags have our names on them. I'd never met him before. Puts his hand down. He says, thanks very much, Brad. I appreciate that. So I realized that he had looked at my bag before he'd even got there to see what my name was. And I thought, that's classy. He proceeded to sit down with me for the next 20 minutes, just the two of us, no one else. Talked about the Ryder Cup that he just won, the roller coaster of emotions that he'd been through in the 6-8 weeks before that. It was that was a neat experience that I like to tell everyone, because he doesn't have a great reputation as being the most friendly guy in the world, and he was great. So,
well, you never know, and you have those personal experiences. I tell people all the time, I say, he didn't sign an autograph, he was a jerk, he was this, and I say, well, what if he was great for the 10 before? I mean, you just don't know.
You just don't know. Yeah.
And who's to say? You have your own experiences, and that's really what colors your opinion about it. Mm. Fourth question, the walk-off, and we'll pertain this will pertain to FLYT Golf and your sort of post-golf career, although I don't think you'll ever be done with golf. But how much does the world of competing on the course compare, if at all, to the world of business for you?
It's funny. I had a chat with a very similar but different. I definitely stress more over like a customer concern a lot more than I ever did over a 3-foot putt. So I'm certainly always wanting to make sure that if a customer comes with us with a question about shipping or a concern they might have, that we're very, very quick to get on top of that and make sure that they are happy with what they're getting, because that churns me far more than it ever did standing over a putt for anything of value. So very different, but more important to me is the looking after the customers and making sure they're happy as opposed to making a putt.
It's a different world, but also having been through that pressure, you know how to handle that stuff, even if the feel is a little bit different into somebody else and their experience that is on the line, which ultimately is the success of FLYT Golf, among other things.
Sure.
Bonus wrap up, final question. Who's, in your opinion, who is the scariest player in the world right now? I guess that's a way of saying who's the best player in the world. The rankings may hold themselves out, they may not, but you know, it's interesting because there was that long stretch where you just didn't even ask.
Right. I know. It was crazy.
And there's so many great players now, but who does it for you?
Dustin Johnson. I just don't. It's hard to argue that there's anyone that's better. Now, it's a tricky one because Rory McIlroy, you know, I find it hard to go past Rory. If he's on his game, I don't see how anyone really beats him. But DJ is probably that guy that just, I mean, week in, week out, you know he's going to be there. And if he's leading, you know, he can just run away with tournaments like Tiger could. So I think that's the biggest thing. And people know if he's on his game, they're just not going to catch him because it's because of his mentality. He just doesn't care. He's like, no, you know, hit that one in the trees, I'll find it, and I'll hit it on the green and I'll make the putt. He keeps it simple. And I think that's a massive benefit to him.
Part of the mental game and the way a guy like that is wired. I would say trying to answer that question is like asking the meteorologists what the weather is going to be. You could have all the knowledge in the world.
Yeah.
And then they're going to tell you were wrong. It's just not that simple.
Right.
So you go based on what you know. And you know that sport can change at any moment. It's more the long picture, the big picture. And it's tools like yours that help all of us, whether it's those of us that struggle or those at the highest level, to continue to work on that craft, which you know as well as anyone never stops in the world of golf. So for people that want more, simplest way, Brad, is flytgolf.com. Also FLYT Golf on Instagram for a lot of pointers and things like that too, right?
Yeah, at FLYT Golf on Instagram, Twitter as well. Twitter's very new. You know, we're just starting to build that up, working towards it anyway. But Instagram, we've been on there for a little while. And then YouTube, FLYT Golf on YouTube, tons of instructional stuff. And we actually have a bradsmithgolf.com content website now, you know, free golf content, instructional stuff for everyone to take a look at, bunch of course write-ups, and we have some fitness stuff on there that we've teamed up with Jonathan Avalos down in Charlotte, North Carolina. So he's got about 10,000 followers on Instagram. He's great on the golf fitness side of things.
All right, so bradsmithgolf.com, and then FLYT Golf for anyone that, if you're looking and you're listening and not watching our YouTube video, it's FLYT. So FLYT Golf, FLYTGOLF.com. As for me, you can reach me at joelgoldbergmedia.com. Any suggestions for the show, you can certainly get a signed copy of the book there. A shout out to my sponsors, Kansas City Audio Visual, Kitsa Construction, and Enterprise Bank and Trust. Businesses often come to Enterprise Bank because they demand and frankly are worthy of more than the status quo and need a local partner who understands their business. Brad, congrats on the early success of FLYT Golf. Have a great golf season as the warmer months are coming here. And I know, especially with the pandemic, more so than ever, everybody is chomping at the bit just to get out of the house, get a little outdoors and get out there and play some golf. So appreciate you spending some time on the podcast today. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me, mate. Thank you. All right. And there we go. The first Australian. I love being called mate. It's so different. By the way, Peter Moylan taught me that it's really simple. I can't do it for everything, but he said for like razor blade, you just have to change it to Rizablide. Right. That was really good. I'll give you that. Right. That was a good one. I don't know if I can do it for the rest, but it was just changing like the A to an I. Just get lazy on your vowels. That's the easiest way to do it. Lazy on them, right. That's about as far as it goes. That's about as much as I could do. I didn't ask any other crazy questions about, stereotypical Australian things like kangaroos or I don't know, whatever it is. But we got to talk a lot of golf, got to talk some business. Thanks again, Brad, for doing it. You got it. Cheers, Joel. Thanks, mate. All right. And thank you to everyone for listening and watching. Hope to catch you next time on Rounding the Bases.